And so our teenage daughter, Ariana, was 14 at the time. Mila was 4. And they had bunk beds, but oftentimes Mila would climb into the bed with Ariana, and Ariana slept on the top. If Mila hadn't climbed into the bunk that night, she wouldn't be here.
No.
She would have passed away from the seizure, but she did. And so about 4:45 in the morning, Ariana came upstairs. I remember I think she shook me and said, Mom, wake up. And I kind of like, took my eye mask off and, looked at her, and she was like, Mom, Mila's acting weird. She's shaking and her eyes are rolling back in her head. And at that point, like, I sprang up, hearing that sentence, but I didn't know what I was about to walk into. And so I don't remember walking down the stairs. I don't remember any of that part. I remember being woken up, being told that she was, shaking, and then I remember walking into the room. And this part just it's so hard, but I walked in and she was in, at that point, a tonic clonic seizure. I knew what it was immediately because we had a friend that had, really bad epilepsy and had seen it before.
Well, for people that don't know what a tonic clonic seizure is, what is it?
So a tonic clonic seizure is what used to be called a grand mal seizure, but it involves like your whole body. Mm-hmm. Whereas like focal seizures can be one side or just like a specific part, and there's a million different types of seizures. But a tonic clonic seizure, I don't know if it's the most dangerous kind, definitely the most dramatic, but I think you can still have what happened to her happen in other types of seizures. But she was in a tonic clonic, so this was her whole body. And there was a couple things that entered my mind when I walked in the room. Honestly, like one of the first things was her brain can't take this. Her brain won't survive this. And just this utter feeling of helplessness and thinking, we've made so much progress on speech. We've made so much progress in her development. She's a miracle. And I really thought at that point that she was gone. Mm-hmm. The baby that we had and knew was gone. Mm-hmm. And so I told Ariana to call 911, and she has a bark phone. And so for whatever reason, the call like didn't go through, or it didn't seem like it was going through. They did end up calling back. So I think it did go through, but she couldn't hear anybody on the other line. So I had her run upstairs to get my phone, and she brought it to me, and I called. And, of course, 911, what's your emergency? And I remember just spitting out, my 4-year-old daughter has had a seizure. She's never had a seizure before. She is not sick. I gave them our address. And then, or I think I said she's having a seizure because she was still seizing. And he started asking me questions, and I remember like he was asking me like, does she have a fever? Does she, whatever. And I remember saying, I'm happy to answer these questions, but can you please send someone first? Then start asking me questions. And he clarified he had already dispatched somebody. But I was thinking in that moment, that this was holding up dispatch. And so I was like, no, send someone, then ask questions. But that's not how it was. And I do remember, I don't know if this was her ambulance, but I do remember hearing, as soon as I said those words, sirens behind him. Must be leaving the building. Again, don't know if that was her ambulance or not, but walked back into the room, and at that point I noticed that the bed was soaked from the top of her head, like underneath her, from the top of her head all the way down to her knees, like completely saturated. It smelled a little bit like vomit, but it wasn't vomit. And the 911 operator said, put her on her side. Mm-hmm. Which I was like, duh, I know that. But you're not thinking about that in that moment. And so I put her on her side, and drool poured out of her mouth. And from there, I think he tried to get off the phone, and I said, would you please stay on the phone with me? and he said that he would unless another call came in. But he did end up staying the whole time because I didn't know what I was going to end up, like, I didn't know if I would need him, and we lived in a somewhat rural area, and you don't think about ambulance response time until you need them. So we were serviced by a volunteer fire department, which we understand now means that somebody is on call but at their house, most likely with a radio. They get the call. They have to drive to the fire station, get the truck, and then come to our house. And then regional paramedic services were dispatched as well, but they would have been dispatched from somewhere in the Birmingham area, and we were 30 minutes northwest of Birmingham, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a back and forth conversation between me and him of me just asking, where are they? What's taking so long? I would look out the window. I remember parting the blinds in Ariana's room, just praying that I would see sirens and asking him what was taking so long. Around at some point during this time, Aiden woke up and he came into the room. I don't know at what point, I don't know where he was during that time. I don't know, but still on the phone with 911. And by this point, I don't know, it had been a while and she was still seizing. And I remember the 911 operator asking me, is she breathing? Is that her making those sounds? And I would say, yes, she's breathing, but not well. Where are they? And that was our back and forth conversation. Is she breathing? Is that her making those sounds? Yes, she's breathing, but not well. Where are they? And it got bad enough to where she was really gasping for air, struggling loudly to get it, and her lips were turning blue. And I just thought, what started circulating through my mind at that time was, I'm going to have to start CPR on her for the second time in her life. And I don't know how, which is one reason why I don't know that I thought about this necessarily at the time, but I needed the 911 operator to be on the line in case that happened. And I had my hand on her chest and just would feel her breathing, and the sounds and just the way that it sounded, the way it looked, the way, just like everything, it was just flashes in my mind pretty often.